ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Paranormal Portal Pieces. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Tonight's episode's another great one. This is, again, another excerpt from our incredible interview with Mr. Vic Cundiff of Dogman Encounters Radio, and we had a wild discussion about all things Dogman, and Vic really has his fingers on the pulse of this across the world. I mean, really, he's done so much in bringing this phenomena to light and creating a forum for people to share their experiences. So it was a real honor to have this talk with Vic, and we had a great time, and I'm sure you're going to see that in this episode as well. But this is a great conversation with wonderful questions and amazing answers, and just a lot of insights into the weirdness that is the Dogman phenomena. So I think you're going to like it.
Wow. Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know I hadn't heard that episode before tonight. And just hearing how his voice trembled, how he was still dealing with the emotion of that event that happened so long ago, but it's so incredibly imprinted on his very being. Oh man, Vic, that's a powerful testimonial.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, no doubt.
Wow. I mean, thank God for what you do. Thank God that you could help him to work past that. But the interesting thing is that it sounds like he had put it so far, buried it so far in his own psyche, he didn't even realize the impact that it was having in every part of his life after that. And I suppose him getting in touch with you, him sharing this story, will be very cathartic for him and has been very cathartic, but you could hear it in how he was telling it. It's like, now I know why. Yeah. Now I know why. It was like he was probably doing battle with himself for all these years, carrying around this trauma that there was nowhere to put it.
He was. Yeah, that's pretty typical for eyewitnesses. Some eyewitnesses, they think that you can bury it, and that's the effective way of dealing with it. But I think in most cases, if they do bury it like that, to try and hide it from themselves, which you can't do that. But if you do decide to suppress it like that, it's going to come to the surface, whether you want it to come to the surface or not. At some point down the road. So, yeah, it's definitely better to come to terms with it, meet it head on. The problem is with most of these people, until they find out about me and what I do, they don't have the means to do that. So all they can do is to try and suppress it. And that's the best way they know to deal with it. So yeah, just like I said, I feel so lucky to be in a position where people like that can find me and we can talk about what's been troubling them about their encounters and bring them back to a good place. I feel so lucky.
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing is powerful and it's important, and of course it's entertaining as well. But that's being on the outside looking in. I don't think that any of your witnesses would ever use the word entertaining. Yeah. But that's just that's just me looking at it from the perspective and safety of my home. If I were in those experiences, I may have a whole different opinion. But it's a process. And the fact that you guys are working through those things and helping them put it back together and not only that, but giving them a forum. And then people like him will hear that story and it'll maybe help someone else come forward and help someone else come forward. And that was one of the questions that I had yet to ask you, is why in the last 10 years are there so many more stories? And do you think it's just a matter of people finally being able to have the dialogue?
Well, it's easy to think that more encounters are being reported lately because of the fact that, you hear about so many more encounters now than you ever heard about in the 90s or even the 2000s. But, I think it's our communication, the increased ability to communicate that we have now. I think that's the biggest reason why you hear about so many more encounters now than you ever used to hear about. So, I don't think that they're happening with an increased frequency. I just think it's our ability to let others know. It doesn't matter if you're in Africa, if you're in Antarctica. If something of note happens, no matter where you're at in the world, on the planet, we have the means now to let that news travel around the world in the snap of a finger. So, yeah, I think that's why we hear more about encounters now than we ever have. I don't think it's because they're breeding like rabbits or anything like that.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So with that idea, what do you think is keeping their population down? Is it because they prefer to be loners? Or is it just because they don't propagate like you would think some kind of a wild animal like a wolf or a coyote could? Or do you think it's just something DNA with them?
I really don't know. All I could do is guess at that, but it would make sense that they wouldn't become overly fecund like rabbits or roaches because they do have to eat. And if you had dogmen hanging out at the local corner store and dogmen over here, over there, yeah. I mean, how are they going to feed themselves? How are they going to make a living? So it just makes sense that they would be smart enough to know that if they overpopulate, then that's not going to be in their best interests. It's going to make them easier to discover. And they seem to like being the ones to push the issue, but they don't seem to like when you come looking for them. But yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons why that might be. I don't know for sure what the real answer is, but there are a lot of possibilities that would explain that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, real quick, I have to ask this question. It's for a friend of ours over in Australia, our buddy Cade. He's been dying for me to ask this question. He wants to know if how the encounters in Australia differ or are different than the ones in America. What are the differences between those? Are there any differences?
No, there don't seem to be any differences, no matter where the encounters happen. They seem to be pretty typical of each other. I mean, whether they happen in Croatia or Africa or Serbia, you name it, they all seem to follow the same predictable course. The dogman, it could have easily evaded detection, but it didn't. It decided to push the issue. It sought out the eyewitness, and once the eyewitness saw it and freaked out, and understandably so, once they freaked out and the dogman saw that, the dogman moved on. Rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat, yes.
I've got a quick question to ask you. I know this is too big of a can of worms to get into at this point in the show because I know we're on the tail end here, but do you think there is government knowledge of this, and do you think do you think they ever dispatch kill teams to deal with these, like are witnessed or are claimed to happen in the Bigfoot world?
Thank you for asking that
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the government knows about them. I've got no doubts the government knows more about them than any other agency, anyone would know about them, just because they have the means to.
Sure.
And yeah, I think under certain extreme circumstances, they will and have dispatched kill teams. I don't know how effective the kill teams have been are, but no, I think they do dispatch kill teams if you have a situation that might cause an unfortunate outcome that the government would not be happy with, and then they do send out teams to try and deal with them. Like in the LBL, it's been alleged that that's what happened there. So, yeah, I think that's a definite yes on both counts.
Wow. You know, but now that brings me back to another kind of a conspiratorial question, because earlier you mentioned that maybe not all dogmen are natural. Maybe they are manipulated on a DNA, a cellular level. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, some people try to explain away the dogman phenomenon by saying, well, they were just created by our government in some lab. Well, yeah, I can appreciate you feeling that way, but that definitely wouldn't explain why we had an encounter, several encounters documented back in the 1800s.
Right.
You're going to tell me that the governments of the world, they were advanced enough to be able to gene splice together a dogman back then? No way. So, yeah, that does not explain that, but who's to say that now with our technology, maybe we can Maybe we are advanced enough in our gene splicing to create a test tube Dogman. But if that's the case, then you have the naturally occurring ones, and then you have the test tube Dogmen. But yeah, to say that they're all the result of some laboratory experiment, that just doesn't hold water.
Right.
Wow. Well, I know we've kept you a long time. I got to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome.
It's been an epic journey through the portal with you. And thank you so much for making this happen and coming on tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Now, I want you to take a couple minutes and let people know how to stay in touch with you, Vic, and to follow your work.
Well, if you'd like to tune in to Dogman Encounters, the best way to do that would be to go to the website dogmanencounters.com. And once you're there in the site, if you wanted to find out the 2 different ways to listen, if you visit the podcast page, you'll find all the links you'd need right there, any instructions, all that is right there on the podcast page. If you happen to have had a Dogman encounter that you need help dealing with, then if you visit dogmanencounters.com, right there on the home page, there's a button you can click on to submit a form that's going to come to me, and I'll receive that form submission, and basically I'll contact you. I'll schedule a conversation with you, and that'll give me a chance to find out what's troubling you and whatnot, and that way we can work through what's ailing you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. And again, special thanks to Vic Cundiff and Dogman Encounters Radio for being on the show. I'm going to have to get Vic back again. That was a great time. But please make sure to subscribe and like these episodes, and make sure to ring the bell so you get notified every time a new one comes out. But we also encourage you to head over to our Paranormal Portal channel on YouTube, our main channel, and check out the full-length videos of all of these interviews and discussions. They are just phenomenal. We're very proud of our body of work, and we really hope that you'll go over and check them out as well. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and we'll see you soon.